Good afternoon. I want to extend my greetings from sunny, hot South Florida. I am so happy to join all of you once again at your 20th Education, Technology, and Society Conference. This year, I want to share a few ideas that my teachers and their students have created in an effort to build bridges to learning in a 21st century learning environment. And I have titled my presentation, Mobile Learning, Mobile Technology, and Students. Now, I'd just like to give you a quick introduction to who I am. My name is Dr. Suzanne Lapp, and I am an Associate Professor of Reading and Language Arts at Florida Atlantic University in Boca Raton, Florida, USA. We are actually on the southeastern side of Florida and are sandwiched right in between Miami, Florida to our south and West Palm Beach, Florida to our north. I have had well over 20 plus years of teaching experience, and they have ranged from kindergarten teaching all the way to university level undergraduate and graduate courses, and I have taught throughout the United States. My specialization is in applied educational technology and the preparation of middle and high school teachers who teach English reading and language arts in the culturally, linguistically, and ethnically varied classroom. Okay, let's go ahead and begin. Now, I've put this slide up here. I want to give you a little bit of a background information on the explosive nature of technology as we see it today, educational technology specifically. In today's world, the behavior of young adults is increasingly directed not by other human beings, but rather by mobile apps, technologies that are held in the hand, activated by a touch of a finger, and designed so that they are able to carry out more and more of life's daily tasks. Now, this approach to gathering and processing information is referred to as the app-directed generation. And this was a phrase coined by Howard Gardner and his former graduate student, Katie Davis. Now, this generation, this app-directed generation, generally affects people who've been born after 1990 and members of this generation have been surrounded and immersed by an unprecedented degree of technology, including smartphones, laptops, and tablets. This generation expects that every aspect of their life will be quick, efficient, streamlined, and available immediately on demand. Naturally, this new form of learning has resulted in great enthusiasm mixed with some concern as educational researchers, psychologists, teachers, parents, and students really try to understand the role of mobile learning in the classroom. Although these educational and psychological considerations are of critical importance, the intent of my discussion today is to describe how mobile learning is impacting the 21st century classroom and what mobile tools, specifically apps and web-based tools, are available to teachers so that they can readily harness this explosive form of instruction and use it productively in their classrooms to educate their students. Now, one of the most popular forms of mobile learning among young adults today consists of social media and includes programs like Facebook, YouTube, and many, many more. Social media and mobile technology is really part of our daily lives. Social media is ubiquitous, it's interactive, and it's informative. And as educators, we really need to recognize and realize that the way kids are going to learn to gather information and all of these lovely things needs to change. Now, I've put a picture up here of Howard Gardner because I think he is instrumental in moving this effort forward. And for those of you who aren't familiar with him, Howard Gardner is a well-known American developmental psychologist, and he is most recognized for his work on multiple intelligences. And what he stated was that learning in the 20th century classroom needs to take into account the fact that new technologies will make materials vivid, easy to access, and fun to play with, and they readily address the multiple ways of knowing that humans possess. Now, what I'm specifically focusing my discussion on today are the technologies that would impact kids that we would consider in the United States to be middle grade students. So we're looking essentially at kids that are in grades 4 through 6. So that would put their age range approximately between 8 to 13 or 14 years of age. Now, some of the more interesting things that research has proven is that kids at middle grades are generally more proficient in the use of multimedia tools and applications than their teachers. They spend an astronomical amount of time using media content, and in fact, somewhere roughly around 11 hours a day. They use mobile and online media to participate in social networking, to download videos and music, and gather information from a wealth of online resources. And they generally demand material that is relevant and connected to their lives. Now, I think this is a really interesting diagram that I'd like to share with you today. What this diagram indicates is the level of social media traffic that is used by individuals every minute of every day. Now, if you look at the top section right here, I have listed the social media giant, Facebook. Now, according to this diagram, Facebook is measured in a matter of seconds. So, according to this, every second, 41,000 new posts have been uploaded to Facebook. And there's generally over 300 gigabytes of information that is actually transferred on Facebook. Another incredibly popular social media tool is YouTube videos. And in fact, this is a YouTube video. Generally, what's been found is that roughly 100 hours of video is uploaded every minute of every day. Now, another very, very popular social media tool, and this is particularly ones used by young people, is Instagram. And in Instagram, what you have is roughly 3,000 images uploaded every second of every day. Now, the intent of my presentation is not to overwhelm you with information, nor to place you in a state of fear and worry about the extent of social media in the lives of children, but instead, what I want to do is I want to encourage you to use mobile learning and social media carefully and effectively. Now, what I believe is that social media, when it is carefully implemented and scrutinized in the classroom, can encourage discussion of information both inside and outside the classroom. Social media promotes active learning among students as they consider information that they have learned and can relate that new information to their own backgrounds. Another positive byproduct of effective implementation of social media is that students may be exposed to other students who differ from them, and they differ from them in terms of culture, religion, or from a socioeconomic status. And this can actually stimulate and reinforce an acceptance of differences, which is crucial for so many children. Now, the next set of slides that I want to show you demonstrate support for mobile learning and teaching. And what I'm intending to do is to anchor these concepts with some popular educational approaches and philosophies, namely differentiated learning, student-centered learning, and standards-based learning. Now, the first slide that I have here talks a little bit about what differentiated learning approach is. The differentiated learning approach helps teachers plan for successful instruction. Differentiated learning is a student-centered approach that recognizes that all students have different learning preferences and interests, which cause them to learn differently. Teachers develop personalized instruction that accommodates each student's learning needs and interests and challenges them to meaningfully engage in curriculum to achieve maximum growth as a learner. Now, the second anchoring educational approach that I'd like to share with you is called student-centered learning. Now, essentially, in student-centered learning, the belief is that learning takes place in contexts that are relevant to the student. Learning is an active process of making meaning from the experience, and this process involves the collaboration that students have with each other and with their teachers. Now, in the United States, today, and actually for quite some time, many stakeholders, including politicians, business owners, and educators, have been driving discussion on policies related to the adoption of the Common Core state standards. And this has gotten a lot of attention over several years. Now, what's taking place currently today is that many states have modified these Common Core standards to fit in line with the particular needs of each state. But the general consensus is that it is imperative for teachers to effectively design mobile learning and technology implementation with the required state standards in mind. Now, essentially, just to give you a little overview of what this is, students in grades kindergarten through 12 must be able to demonstrate the ability to use technology to solve looming problems and to be able to conduct research and communicate and collaborate with their classmates and teachers. Students are expected to be able to identify problems or challenges which they'd like to solve, and with their teachers' suggestions and directions, use appropriate mobile apps and websites to research and gather information and evaluate internet and mobile resources. And finally, students should take that information and be able to effectively communicate and share their research findings with classmates and teachers. Students should be able to peruse the mobile learning resources that are made available to them, specifically apps and websites, and then to be able to evaluate this information for its effectiveness in their learning process. So in the remaining amount of time that I have with you, I'd like to share some successful stories where teachers that I have worked with in my university classes and their students have had tremendous success implementing these apps and websites. The teachers that I deal with and are working with children are working with kids that are generally between the ages of 8 and 15, again, middle grade students. And they have found these mobile tools to be useful, exciting, and successfully stimulate learning among their students. Now, this first slide talks about a really cool little program. It's actually an app, and the app is called Telegami, or Talking Avatars. Now, here you see an example of a teacher who has designed a simple telegami to introduce a new topic in her lecture. The telegami immediately got the students' attention, and they became very interested in the subject matter. Naturally, once the lecture was completed, the students in this particular classroom immediately wanted to learn how to design their own telegamis. So that was rather exciting, and the teacher felt very intrigued by this experience. Another successful application that's being used among my teachers and their students is a program that features word clouds. And these word clouds can be divided into really two categories. One is a program called Tuxedo, and the other one is called Wordle. Now, these word clouds allow students to create imaginative images based on the collection of words. Word clouds can be used to help students organize their thoughts and ideas, and teachers can use word clouds to introduce new concepts in the classroom. In this particular example that we've included, I have a teacher who encouraged one of her students to not only use a word cloud to describe something that was going on in this child's life, but actually to upload a slide that best represents her life, and so that's what she did. The next slide is, again, something that's been around for quite some time. This is Google Earth. Now, Google Earth still is extremely intriguing, especially for kids that are in the younger range of this group, kids that are maybe 7, 8, 9 years old. One teacher used Google Earth with a kid that was 8 years old, and it was kind of neat to see her comment. She basically said, "I like to use Google Earth because it allows me to feel like I'm flying around the earth like a bird. It's a good app to use in terms of teaching geography, and as well as certain topographical features. And in this case, the teacher was trying to teach about a certain place in Ireland, Cork, Ireland actually, and used some video and some images as well as the map itself of Ireland. Another tool that has gotten a lot of attention recently among teachers is a program called Sphere 360. Sphere 360 is a panoramic photography app, and it is really quite interesting to use in terms of using it for virtual field trips. Now, a lot of kids are unable to, go to these wonderful exotic places, so you can actually bring these places to the kids through virtual field trips. The database includes over 300,000 different spheres or collections of photos. Now, the problem with Sphere 360 is that it is constantly being upgraded. Ideally, kids will be able to create their own spheres by going outside and taking photos, but you have to have the right types of devices. And right now, those are kind of the lower order, earlier programs. It does not support anything above an iPhone 4. The next program that I think has been very, very popular with my students is called the Y-Files, the science behind the news. And what's really quite popular for my students is the fact that, as you can see, it clearly addresses the state standards that my students are focusing in, namely problem solving, research, and communication. Essentially, the Y-Files is a science lesson which connects to current events and teaches students about the science behind current events. And lately, in the United States, we've been dealing with some of the problems associated with the flooding in South Carolina. Also, there are discussions about earthquakes and hurricanes. Now, some extension activities that teachers can do, actually before they introduce kids to the Y-Files, would be to assign them homework sheets which ask kids to identify topics dealing and being able to answer questions like who, what, when, where, and why. And so they go ahead and they do these assignments at home, and then they come to class and they're able to have much more enriching classroom discussions. Now, the dynamic nature of the classroom discussions will ultimately lead to more effective opportunities for extension activities, which will thus enhance students' critical thinking and collaboration. Another really popular website tool that my students use is something called the Learning Network, Teaching and Learning with the New York Times. Now, what I like about this website is that it uses high-quality resources for teachers to share with their students. Another plus is that the material is readily accessible to reading strategies. Now, I am a reading professor here at Florida Atlantic University, and so I try to stress the importance of using effective strategies. In this example here, they talk about anticipation guides. An anticipation guide is a wonderful strategy to get students interested in reading. Now, the teacher could begin the lesson by stating an opinion, and then the students would need to write out sentences based on the anticipated article and what it will address. These are generally considered prediction skills. Teachers will allow students to dive directly into the articles and either support or revise their predictions or opinions. So this has been quite a popular little activity, and in fact, I thought it was kind of interesting. Here's an example of lifestyles in the Brazilian jungle. So one of my students actually did some research on that. The next website that I'd like to share with you is called National Geographic. And this is a web tool which is used for intermediate grade students. Now, these would be kids that would be maybe 13, 14 years old. So they're more advanced and sophisticated readers. They would be able to use this program to deal with more complicated topics such as climate change and endangered or extinct animals, what the differences are, what are the challenges associated with this. What it does too, which I find quite interesting about this program, is that it introduces children or young adults to important text features. And that's something that the state standards are really concerned about. The text features that I'm talking about deal with highlighted words and hyperlinked words. And students need to know that when they see words that are either hyperlinked or highlighted, it's an automatic indicator that this material is really going to be important for them to know, and it gives them the opportunity to extend their learning on the subject matter by just clicking on those particular words, and it will take them in a new direction. National Geographic is really a nice program because it takes science topics and it connects them to current events topics, which makes the material more engaging for the students. Now, the last slide that I'd like to share with you today is called howjasay.com. Now, I found this particular slide beneficial to me because as I was going through and looking at different things, I noticed the use of the example about the falls that separate Argentina and Brazil. And I was concerned, how in the world do I pronounce this particular falls? So I used this program in order to figure out that it was actually called Iguazu Falls. So what HowJasay does, it is a online pronunciation guide, and it gives you 9 varieties of the English language, and it's associated with 9 other languages. Now, unfortunately, it does not include Portuguese, but it includes Spanish, so I hope that's close enough. But it gives you pronunciation samples of well over 40 native speakers. So, some final thoughts on this topic. I hope I've given you some general concepts, including some information on app generation, as well as some supportive instructional approaches to consider, such as differentiated and student-centered learning and standards-driven instruction, which teachers must consider as they begin to implement mobile learning and technology in their classrooms. I sincerely hope that I've provided you with some interesting mobile and web-based tools which you might consider implementing in your classroom. Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate once again with your conference, and I wish all of you a wonderful day and great success in your teaching careers.